Have you ever asked yourself, who am I if I'm not trying to impress anyone? Most people never find out because from the moment we're young, we're trained to please. Be nice and agreeable. Don't upset anyone. We're told approval means we're safe. And without realizing it, we shape our entire identity around being liked. We smile when we're uncomfortable. We say yes when we mean no. And somewhere along the way, we lose ourselves. But eventually, if you're lucky, something shifts. You stop asking, do they like me? And you start asking, do I like the person I've become? That's the moment everything begins to change. This video isn't about rebellion or being cold. It's about developing the quiet courage to finally be honest, to stop living for other people's comfort, and start showing up for your own life. If you stay with me till the end, I promise you'll see your relationships, your confidence, and even your past in a whole new light. Not everyone will like who you become, but you will, and that's what matters most. Let's begin this transformation. Part 1. Why we lose ourselves trying to fit in. As humans, we're wired for connection. It's not weakness, it's survival. Thousands of years ago, being accepted by the tribe meant staying alive. Isolation wasn't just lonely, it was dangerous. So it makes sense that even today we crave approval. We want to be liked, to fit in and to belong. But here's the paradox. The more you shape yourself to meet everyone else's expectations, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You say yes when everything inside you screams no. You laugh when you're uncomfortable, just to keep the peace. You go along with things, not because you agree, but because conflict feels unbearable. You learn how to be pleasant, nice, and agreeable. And people applaud you for it. You're so easy to get along with, they say. You're such a good person. But what they're really praising is your self-abandonment. The Stoics believe that peace doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from living in alignment with your values, your reason, your truth. And if you're constantly living for other people's opinions, you're not actually living. Listen to this very closely. If everyone likes you, you've probably sacrificed too much of yourself. You've watered yourself down to avoid being misunderstood, judged, or disliked. But that comes at a cost. You start to feel invisible, even in a crowded room. You may look successful. You may be surrounded by people. But you'll feel hollow. Because when you live for the approval of others, you're renting your identity, and the rent is paid in anxiety. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because the path to becoming your true self is paved with rejection from people who only liked the version of you that made them comfortable. You weren't born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be free. And freedom begins when you stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about how to start reclaiming yourself. One courageous decision at a time. Part 2, the story of Kaido, the mask of the perfect son. Kaido was what every parent dreams of. He didn't rebel. He didn't talk back. He followed the rules, earned top grades, and smiled at all the right times. He was the definition of a good boy. Polite, dependable, safe. To the outside world, Kaido was perfect. But within, he was quietly suffocating. See, every choice Kaido made passed through an invisible filter. What would they think? Would they approve? Would they still respect me? Would they still love me? He studied engineering, not because he loved solving problems, but because it was respectable, safe. It gave his parents something to brag about at dinner parties, but it gave him nothing inside. He stayed in friendships that drained him, nodded along to opinions he didn't believe, laughed at jokes that made his stomach turn, because being accepted felt more important than being seen. Until one night, everything went quiet. There was no dramatic breakdown, no yelling, just silence. He stood in front of a mirror and realized something terrifying. He didn't know who he was without everyone else's expectations. That was the moment he began peeling off the mask. He started small. He said no to a social event he didn't want to attend, and didn't explain why. He took long walks with his phone on airplane mode. He quit engineering. and started a tiny creative studio out of his bedroom, just because it made him feel alive again. Some people were confused. Others were disappointed. A few called him selfish. But for the first time in his life, Kaido felt honest. He wasn't trying to be admired. He was trying to be real. And yes, not everyone liked the new him. But the people who mattered, the ones who truly saw him, stayed. The rest? They fell away like leaves in the wind. The Stoics taught, if you want to be happy, stop trying to be understood by everyone. Kaido didn't set out to be disliked. He simply stopped pretending, and that gave him a kind of peace no approval ever could. Stay with me, because next we'll explore how you can begin this same journey, one brave choice at a time. Part 3. Why we fear being disliked so much. Let's be brutally honest. Most people would rather live a lie than risk being disliked. Not because they're weak, but because deep down we associate being disliked with danger. There's a survival instinct buried in us. It's ancient. Back in the tribal days, to be rejected wasn't just emotional, it was existential. Rejection meant exile, and exile meant death. So even now, centuries later, the fear lingers. When someone criticizes us, ignores our message, rolls their eyes when we speak truthfully, it triggers that old panic. What if I'm cast out? What if I'm left alone? And so we play it safe. We laugh when we don't feel like it. We agree to things that make our stomach twist. We over-explain, over-apologize, and overthink every word just to avoid friction. But here's the paradox. The more you try to be liked, the more you disappear. You become a character, a version of yourself carefully edited to please the audience. You smile through discomfort, you nod through dishonesty, and the applause you get, it doesn't feed you, it starves you, because being liked is not the same as being loved. Approval is not intimacy, and performing for connection always leads to disconnection. Here's what no one tells you. When you constantly try to win people over, you don't actually get closer to them, you get further from yourself. And eventually, you start to resent the people you're performing for. But even worse, you start to resent yourself. The Stoics taught that tranquility comes not from external approval, but from internal alignment, when your actions match your values. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's not just ancient wisdom, that's freedom. So ask yourself honestly, what's the cost of always being liked? And are you willing to trade that for the peace of finally being you? I promise, the moment you stop fearing rejection is the moment you start living. And in the next part, we'll break down exactly how to start building the courage to live without the mask. Stay with me. Part 4. The story about the people pleaser who finally walked away. Elena was the kind of person everyone depended on. The helper, the listener, always available, always putting herself last. If a friend was struggling, she'd stay up all night talking them through it. If her boss needed someone to work late, she'd volunteer, even if it meant skipping dinner. Her world was built around one unspoken rule. Be there for everyone no matter what. And for a while it worked. People praised her. She's such a good person. She's always there for me. But what they didn't see was the cost. Elena was exhausted. Not just tired, spiritually depleted. Her days were filled with everyone else's needs, and none of her own. She felt anxious when her phone rang, guilty when she tried to rest. She didn't even know what she liked anymore, because she never asked herself. Then one night, after a week of saying yes to everything and everyone, she sat on her kitchen floor. No tears, no breakdown, just silence, and one quiet, honest thought. I don't want to be needed. I want to be known. That was the shift. She started small. Turned off her phone on Sundays. Stopped replying to texts immediately. She said no without explaining. She let people be disappointed. Some called her selfish. Others backed away. But something incredible happened. She didn't fall apart. She came alive. She picked up a paintbrush again, for the first time in years. She laughed, not politely, not nervously, but because she felt joy in her chest. She no longer bent herself into a version that others preferred. She stood upright, unmasked. Elena didn't become someone else. She returned to who she was before the world told her who she had to be. And here's what she learned. The right people, those who truly see you, don't love you because you always say yes. They love you because you're whole, because you're honest, because when you say no, it actually means something when you say yes. She stopped trying to be everything for everyone, and finally became something real, herself. And in doing so, she discovered what Stoics have always known. You cannot serve others from an empty soul. Part 5. The courage to be disliked. Here's what most people get wrong. The courage to be disliked isn't about being cold, indifferent, or dismissive. It's not about walking around with an attitude like you don't care what anyone thinks. That's not courage, that's insecurity wearing a mask. The real courage to be disliked is much quieter, more grounded. It's not loud or aggressive, it's composed. Still, deep. It's about being so deeply rooted in who you are, that even when others don't understand you, you don't collapse. You don't chase after approval like a starving dog. You don't explain yourself just to feel worthy. And you don't shrink to make others comfortable. You simply stand. It's the strength to say, this is who I am. This is what I value, and I'm okay if not everyone agrees. That kind of clarity makes you unshakable. Because once you stop performing for applause, you finally give yourself permission to live with truth. You stop twisting yourself into a version others will accept, and you begin living in alignment with your values, your needs, and your voice. Yes, some people might walk away. Yes, some might call you distant or even selfish. But those who truly matter, the ones meant for your life, they'll show up. And they'll stay. Because the people who love you for your performance will abandon you the moment the show ends. But the people who love you for your essence, they don't need the mask. They never did. And here's what's most powerful. When you stop betraying yourself just to be liked, you begin to rebuild something sacred. Self-respect. That's the foundation of everything. Peace, purpose, power. Not from others, but from within. I promise you, when you begin to live this way, the loneliness you feared gets replaced by something much more meaningful. Freedom. So don't waste your life trying to be everyone's favorite version of yourself. Be your own. That's where the courage truly lies. So here's the question I want you to ask yourself today. What parts of you have you been hiding just to be liked? What dreams have you delayed? What opinions have you silenced? What truth have you avoided? Because here's the secret. When you stop living for others, you don't lose your life. You finally start living it. The courage to be disliked is really the courage to be free. To live honestly. To speak plainly. To walk away when something isn't right. And to trust that the right people will stay. Let others misunderstand you. Let them disapprove. Their confusion is not your burden to carry. Your only task is to be loyal to yourself. If this hit home, leave a comment and tell me, what's one thing you'll stop doing just to be liked? And if you want more content like this, where we talk about inner freedom, stoic clarity, and emotional strength, hit subscribe and let's grow together. Because the moment you stop chasing love is the moment you start attracting it.